invite her and then we can have the prayer?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Sashikala here. As you all know, we have something called the Vastu Mandala, where we are calling people in Ratambara to take us through their own personal journeys. And the more elaborate, more interesting, more fascinating it is, the better it is. So today we have somebody who's been in this journey of art, temple architecture, history, and a variety of other things for years now. We have very, very happy to have Dr. Chitra Madhavan with us. She is a wonderful scholar and a wonderful speaker. I've been following her on her great links. And she also takes people on journeys, in historical journeys, including in Cambodia. And I think it's a marvelous thing that she's doing. So we are very, very pleased to have you here, Chitra.
Thank you.
And we look forward to many more such interactions with you. Thank you.
Over to you, Priya. You can do the prayer.
Is my screen visible to all of you?
Yes, we can see it.
Good evening, everybody. Let us all together invoke the blessings of the Almighty. Shri Rama Padamani Kripa Jagune Shri Rama Padamani Kripa Jagune Chitani Kirave Shri Rama Padama Varijabhava Varijabhava Sanaka Sanadana Varijabhava Sanaka Sanadana Vasavadina Vasavadina Radulella Pujaje Shri Rama Padmani Kripa Chagute. Thank you all. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the speaker today, Chitra Madhavan ma'am. Chitra Madhavan has an MA and an MPhil in Indian history and a PhD in ancient history and archaeology. She is the recipient of 2 postdoctoral fellowships. Chitra ma'am has published 9 books: History and Culture of Tamil Nadu in 2 volumes, Vishnu Temples of South India in 5 volumes, Sanskrit Education and Literature in Ancient and Medieval Tamil Nadu, an Epigraphal Study, and Temples of Kanchipuram. She has written the text for a coffee table book, Snapshots of a Bygone Era, a century of images, which contains about 100 photographs of monuments of India. She has also co-edited a book, South India Heritage, which contains 500 articles on various aspects of South India's heritage and culture, and has edited a book, Kalakshetra's Culture, which contains 20 articles on iconography by well-known authors on this subject. Chitra ma'am has also compiled books on the Srirangam temple and the Varadaraja Perumal temple, Kanchipuram. She regularly conducts heritage tours to places of historical and archaeological significance in India and abroad. It's indeed a privilege to have you here this evening, ma'am. I'm sure it's going to be a feast to all our ears. Looking forward to the talk. The talk will go on for a time of one and a half hours. Post that, we would have a question answer session. So any questions, the chat box will be open and you can drop in your questions there and it will be addressed later. Thank you and looking forward, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you. I need to screen share, please. Uh, at the outset, a very good evening to all of you, and a very, very special thanks to Mrs. Shashikala Anand for inviting me here this evening to talk about the Srirangam temple. It's an honor and a pleasure knowing her and knowing of all the great work that she is doing. And thank you, Chandana, for the coordination, and Priya for that lovely prayer and for introducing me. So, for the next approximately 1 hour, uh, let us visit Srirangam and let us try to find out how much there is in that island town, in that temple, that very grand temple, for us to be proud of. I'll begin with the verse in Sanskritam. सप्तप्राकार मध्ये सरसिज मुकुलोद्भासमाने विमाने कावेरी मध्यदेशे फणिपति शयने शेष पर्यंक भागे निद्रा मुद्राभिरामं कटिनिकरशिर पार्श्व विन्यास हस्तं पद्मधात्री खराभ्यां परिचित चरणं रंगराजं भजेहम्. Meaning, I salute that Rangaraja, that Ranganatha, who sleeps in the yogic pose on the bed of Adisesha. Below that tall Vimanam, which resembles a lotus bud, is surrounded by Sapta Prakara, 7 Prakaras, which is in between the Kaveri, with his right hand under his crown and his lotus-like hand pointing towards his feet. So this is what this verse means. We are now entering a temple that is huge, it's humongous in size. And I would like to say that no lecture, leave alone no lecture even lasting for several days, can do full justice to this temple, because it is so old, it is so big, it is so chock full of history, tradition, rituals, culture, everything. At best, any talk, any book, any documentary on this fantastic temple can only be superficial. Having said that, this is, as you all know, Lord Ranganatha. At the outset, it looks like he is made of stone, but he's actually a stucco image. Stucco is Sudai in Tamil. The image in front is the Utsavamurti, who is called Alahiya Manavalan or Namperumal. That's his name. And he is definitely distinguishable by the Kasturi Tilakam, that forehead mark of Kasturi that he wears. It is also one of the very few temples in Tamil Nadu where goddesses Sri Devi and Bhudevi, who are flanking him, are seated. Usually these goddesses, the goddess of wealth, Lakshmi, and the goddess of the earth, that is Bhudevi, are usually standing on either side of any Vishnu Utsavamurti. There are, of course, other temples where they are seated, but this is the most prominent one. Both of them are seated. What is even more interesting, and though it is not clear in this picture, is that Lord Ranganatha wears footwear. A great Alvar called Kulashekara Alvar has said, Ranga Yatra Dine Dine. In the Ranganatha Swami temple, there is a yatra every day. He was absolutely right. And so Ranganatha with his footwear goes on a yatra almost every day, even today. So now we are looking at the ground plan of this temple, which I have scanned from a book on Srirangam by a very great scholar named V.N. Hari Rao, whose PhD thesis this was. And we are looking, you heard this verse, Sapta Prakara Madhye. So these are the Sapta Prakaras, and right in the middle, right in the nerve center, this round one is the main sanctum of Lord Ranganatha. This is a very unusual central sanctum. It is round. It's completely round. Usually you have square, you have rectangular garbhagrahas. That is the main sanctum. You also have what is called Gaja Prishta, meaning it is oval in shape at the back. but hardly ever do you have something. There are, but it's very rare to find, especially in Tamil Nadu. So it's completely circular, and in the center of which reclines Lord Ranganatha. Now, um, this temple, how old is it, is the first question that people would like to ask. It is very difficult to give the date of this temple. The origin is lost in the mists of time. We have, as students of history, very difficult to pinpoint a date as to when this temple actually came into being. However, if you go via historical evidence, you can clearly say that this temple was there in the 2nd century CE, that is 2nd century AD. Now, how do we know that? Because there is a text called the Ahana Nuru. It belongs to the Sangam age. The earliest historical period as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned is called the Sangam age, which extends from the 3rd century BCE approximately to the 3rd century CE approximately. So this work, Tahana Nuru, which was written in this Sangam age, clearly mentions the Panguni Uttiram festival that was celebrated on the island of Sri Rangam. And there can be no other temple on the island of Sri Rangam than this one where the Panguni Uttaram was celebrated. This was in the 2nd century CE. So we know that this temple was there at that point of time. And then slowly, not in a day, not in a year, not in 100 years, not in 1,000 years, but maybe 2,000 years perhaps, this temple has grown little by little. It's got a horizontal movement. And this is what we call a temple town. At one point of time, the temple was the town itself, as opposed to a town of temples, like say Kanchipuram or Kumbakonam, where in one town there are many temples. This is a temple town. Now, there is a narrow prakaram, an enclosure, a circumambulatory passage right around the main sanctum, which is called the Tiruvunnari. Now, if the Tiruvunnari is included, then altogether there are 8 prakarams. If the Tiruvunnari is not included, as is generally not, then there are 7 prakarams. Now, let me give you the names of the prakarams, starting from the first one, that is called Raja Mahendran Tiruvidi. Let us understand that Tiruvidi means sacred street, sacred enclosure. They all have the names Tiruvidi. So Raja Mahendran, now who was this Raja Mahendran? These are all very historic names. He was a Chola prince who didn't become the king. Perhaps he contributed to the repair because his date is much later. He couldn't have built it. Maybe he repaired it. Maybe he contributed to it in some way or the other. So that is called the Raja Mahendran Tiruvidi. Next one is named, the second prakaram from the inside is called Kulashekaran Tiruvidi, named after Kulashekara Alvar. Next one is called Alinadan Tiruvidi, that was the name of Thirumangai Alvar. We'll come to these Alvars a little later. I'll explain who exactly they were. The next one is called the Akkalankan Tiruvidi. Akkalankan is a title, and this was the title of Kulothunga Chola the second. Kalanka means blemish. Akkalanka means blemishless, and that was a title. Obviously, Kulothunga Chola II had contributed a lot to that enclosure, and that is named after him. After that, you have 5, 6, and 7. You have the Uttaravidi, Chittiravidi, and the Adaya Valaindan Tiruvidi. Now, in the last 3, you have houses. You have people living there, people connected with the temple, etc. Those 3 streets are very broad. But the temple, many of the sanctums of the temple are also to be seen on these 3 streets. Now, going to the sources of the Sri Rangam temple, we need to know how it grew, who contributed to it, who built this structure, who built that structure, etc. And there is one book that is of the greatest help as far as this temple is concerned, and this is called the Koil Orugu. Now, Urugu in Tamil, very Tamil word, Urugu means a register or a chronicle. Now, Koil Urugu, Koil means temple, as you all know in Tamil. So, Koil Urugu could possibly refer to any temple. How do we know that this is the Srirangam temple? Because as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, and as far as Vaishnavism is concerned, Koil temple is only Srirangam. For the devotees of Shiva, Kovil is Chidambaram in Tamil Nadu. Here, Kovil is the Ranganatha Swami temple in Srirangam. So, the Koil Orugu literally is a compilation of various events, big and small, important, not so important, etc., over the ages, over a very, very long period, put together in the form of a book. It is still available, and this is such a treasure trove of information. The only perhaps problem that we can see with the Kovil Orugu is that some incidents that were older have been put in front, etc. But never mind. So, the Sthala Puranam, or the traditional story connected with this, I don't use the word mythology, the traditional story connected with this temple was that we all know that Rama killed Ravana in Ayodhya and went back Rama killed Ravana in Lanka and went back to Ayodhya for the Pattabhishekam. We all know that Vibhishana also attended the Pattabhishekam of Rama. And after the Pattabhishekam was over, when Rama gifted various things to various people who had helped him, including a pearl necklace to Hanuman, he is said to have given Vibhishana, excuse me, who had so selflessly helped him, his Kuladanam. Kuladanam means family wealth. Now, what was that family wealth? It was actually the god that had been worshipped by his ancestors, worshipped by Rama's ancestors. And that was Lord Ranganatha, according to the tradition of this temple, the Sthala Puranam of this temple. So, Lord Ranganatha, enshrined in the Ranga Vimanam, was given to Vibhishana, who was overjoyed. And Vibhishana comes all the way from Ayodhya. En route to Lanka, he stops on the emerald green island of Srirangam and keeps this Ranga Vimanam on the ground. Later, when he is ready to proceed, he picks it up, but that Vimanam would not budge, it wouldn't move. And he heard a divine voice telling him that Lord Ranganatha wants to stay on the island of Srirangam, but for the sake of Vibhishana, would lie down facing south, the direction of Lanka, and Vibhishana goes back to Lanka. Now, see, we can't brush aside Salapuranams. If we do, if we pay no attention to them, we won't be able to identify sculptures such as these, and we won't be able to do full justice to the paintings, etc. Now, having said that, this temple is one rare example of a temple facing south. We all know that most temples face either east or west. There may be some that face north, but how many do we know that face south? So this is oriented south. All the gopurams here in a row, and God Ranganatha lies down facing south. Slightly tilted, his head is towards the direction of Lanka. Now there was this the painting in this temple, and it's a beautiful one over here. And if you see the full picture, the image, here also you can see Vibhishana praying to Lord Ranganatha over here. The second most important source to know about the events that happened in this temple are the inscriptions themselves. There are more than 600 inscriptions that have been etched on the walls of this temple like this. And also, these are epigraphists, people from the Archaeological Survey of India, who are painstakingly copying these inscriptions. So we also have what are called copper plate inscriptions. The stone inscriptions are different, copper plate inscriptions are different. I'm just showing you a copper plate inscription from the Vijayanagara dynasty. This does not belong to the Srirangam temple. It's just for viewers to have an idea of how a copper plate epigraph looks, because generally we don't see them. They are all in museums or they are kept away very safely. So these copper plate inscriptions and the stone inscriptions, numbering more than 600 together, give us a very, very good account of the many, many incidents, many kings, many commoners, army generals, etc., who contributed to this temple. Now, these inscriptions, when you corroborate the evidence found in them with the evidence found in the Koil Oruga, they match. They complement each other. Sometimes the Koil Oruga will have more information, sometimes the inscriptions will have more information. Now, coming to the history of this temple, we all know that it was there in the 2nd century CE because this work called the Ahananuru talks about it. The Silapatigaram, that very famous Tamil classic, also mentions the Srirangam temple. The date, of course, is slightly controversial, but we may perhaps place it around the 5th century CE. The Pallavas who came to power in North Tamil Nadu with Kanchipuram as their capital have definitely contributed to the Srirangam, would have certainly contributed to the Srirangam temple. But unfortunately for us, vestiges of Pallava architecture, sculpture, or inscriptions are not found in the Srirangam temple today. And the reason for that could well be two very devastating invasions that happened in the 14th century. But why, as a historian, I do feel that a lot would have been contributed by the Pallavas to the Srirangam temple is because across the Srirangam temple, across the river Kaveri, you have this rock fort. This is a landmark. And as you climb up Rock Fort, there is a cave temple which belongs to the Pallava period, 7th century AD. So if the Pallavas had been on this side of the river Kaveri, would they not have gone on to the other side and contributed to the temple? Anyway, Pallava inscriptions in the Rock Fort. There is also a temple very, very close to Trichy called Thiruvellarai, the Pundarikaksha Perumal temple. And here also we find some Pallava vestiges. All right. Pandyas also in the 7th century AD had a rock cut cave temple inside the rock fort. They too would have contributed to the Srirangam temple, but unfortunately we have no evidence today. Now, why is it that the Srirangam temple is called the best of the best of best as far as Vishnu temples in Tamil Nadu are concerned? It's not just the sheer size. Even before it attained this size, it had attained that status of being number one among the 108 Divya Deshams. For those in the audience who may not be in the know, Divya Desham is a place sacred to Vishnu that has been praised in the hymns, the Tamil hymns of the Alvars. The Alvars were 12 in number, and they were great devotees of Vishnu, and their compositions are with us even today in this very huge volume, which is called the Nalayira Divya Prabandham. Now, among the 12 Alvars, there was one Alvar who did not sing about God. He sang only about his Guru, Nammalvar, and the name of that Alvar was Madhurakavi. So among the 12, since one didn't sing about temples but only about his guru, we have 11 Alvars who had gone to temples and sung about the greatness of the deities therein. The only temple about which 11 Alvars have sung, have praised the god, is the Srirangam temple. The Tirumala temple, the Venkateshwara temple in Tirumala comes second with 10 Alvars. Why is that? Which Alvar did not go to Tirumala? So among these Alvars, I would like to mention 4. All of them are important, but in connection with the Srirangam temple, I would like to mention 4. One was an Alvar called Tondar Adipodi Alvar. His original name was Vipranarayana, and he was the one who did not sing about any god other than Lord Ranganatha, and therefore Tirupati, he did not go to Tirumala and sing about God Venkateshwara. His love for Srirangam, the Lord of Srirangam, was completely exclusive. He would sing only about this God. He has composed 2 works, the Tirupalli Ezhuchi and the Tirumalai, And till today, the god is woken up in the morning. Ranganatha is woken up in the morning to the lilting tunes of the Tirupalli Elchi. That is the wake up call. I may forget to say this later, so I want to say it now. And it is that when in times of distress, great distress, the Utsavamurti of Lord Ranganatha, this Alahiya Manavalan, was taken out of this temple. I'm going to deal with it in detail later in the lecture, but I may forget to say this point, so I want to tell you this now. When the Utsavamurti was taken out of the Srirangam temple, he finally found his abode in the temple of Venkateshwara in Tirumala. And the Tirupalli Elchi, which was sung for him here in Srirangam, was sung for him there also. The Suprabhatam that is so famous today, and the hills resound with Suprabhatam. Every place you hear the Suprabhatam is actually based on the Tirupalli Elchi mostly. So anyway, so that is Tondarakudi Alvar. Then you have Andal herself, who would marry none but Lord Ranganatha, and she merged into the god over here. You also have Tiruppan Alvar, who was born in Urayur, just across the river from Srirangam. And Tiruppan Alvar was unfortunately of a birth at that point of time when he was not allowed into the temple premises. But to cut a long story short, because I have so much to share and not enough time to elaborate on this, Lord Ranganatha made the priest of the temple carry Tiruppan Alvar on his shoulders and come into his sanctum. And there he sang this very short but beautiful poem called Amalanadaviran. And like Andal, he also merged with the god. He got moksha over there. You have Thirumangai Alvar, who did so much. Alinad and Tirividi. This is Thirumangai Alvar. This is Thirumangai Alvar. No, this image is not from this temple. It's from another temple. He was a chieftain, and he did a lot for this temple. Kuleshekar Alvar abdicated his Chera kingdom in Kerala, came and settled down in Srirangam. And so there are many things that we have to go into. Now, this is the island of Srirangam. This is the Vimanam under which Lord Ranganatha reclines in all grandeur, and this is called the Pranavakara Vimanam, or also the Ranga Vimanam. This temple has 21 gopurams, 21 in all, built at different times. No two are alike. They're all very different, and there is no other temple that has 21 gopurams, of which 2 are extraordinarily important, and we'll come to that a little later. Goddess Ranganayaki is the chief consort of Lord Ranganatha, and she is enshrined in a sanctum all her own. It's huge. That sanctum itself is like a temple by itself. And what is very interesting is that this has the Bilva Maram over here as the Stalavriksham. Now, this is how the sanctum of goddess Ranganayaki looks. This is the Prakaram. And on the ceiling of this Prakaram of goddess Ranganayaki, you have some extraordinary paintings of the 17th century belonging to the Nayak period. We now go to several other Sannadhis. Cherakulavalli, supposed to be the daughter of Kuleshekara Alvar, is also one of the consorts of Lord Ranganatha. So we passed through the Pallava and the Pandya periods. I repeat, though they must have contributed to this temple, we don't have their vestiges of their architecture or sculpture or inscriptions here now. We come to the Chola era. The Cholas, this was their emblem, their crest, that is the tiger. I'm showing you the seal of a copper plate inscription. Now, among the many things that happened in the Chola times, there are a couple of things that are very important. In the 10th century was a king called Parantaka Chola I. And in his time, there lived the first Acharya of the Sri Vaishnava tradition. and his name was Nathamuni. So we have this verse in Vaishnavism, Lakshmi Natha Samarambam Natha Yamuna Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Bande Guru Paramparam. Lakshmi Natha Samarambam, starting from Lakshmi Natha, that is Vishnu. Natha Yamuna Madhyama. Natha refers to Nathamuni. The rest is clear. Asmad Acharya Paryantam, up to my Acharya, Vande Guru Paramparam. I salute my tradition of Acharyas. That's there. Now, who was this Nathamuni? He was a person who, as a youngster, heard some of the verses. The verses of the Alvars are called Pashurams, and he happened to hear some of them. And he was so moved by what he heard, he wanted to learn more. He wanted to know whether there were very many more. And he was told, yes, there were very many more. But he had to go to wear the what is called the Arayar Kulla. They perform only before the deity. They don't perform on outside stages. They have to know the Nalayara Divya Prabandham. They have to know the commentary. They must know music. They must know dance. And it's quite an experience. It's a surreal, sublime experience seeing the Arayars perform in front of the god. Now that was Nathamuni's contribution. The other great Acharya of the Sri Vaishnavite lineage is Ramanujacharya, who was born in 1017, right in the middle of the glorious Chola epoch. You've all heard of Rajaraja Chola, you've heard of his son Rajendra Chola. So Ramanujacharya was born in the reign of Rajendra Chola, and he uh, he was born in Sri Perumbudur near Kanchipuram, lived in Kanchipuram for a number of years, and migrated to Srirangam because Srirangam was like a magnet attracting the best. All Vaishnavites were attracted towards, or even now perhaps attracted by Srirangam. So Ramanujacharya came and lived in Srirangam, and he brought about, this is his sanctum in the fourth prakaram of this temple. It's a very big sanctum by itself. The main image of Ramanujacharya in that sanctum is believed to be his own body itself. It's a little controversial. There are those who don't subscribe to this view, but whatever. Ramanujacharya's contribution to the Srirangam temple is what we need to remember. One of the major contributions was that we all know that the building of a temple, the celebrations of the festivals, rituals, the puja, etc. of a temple are guided by what is called an agama. Now, in Vaishnavism, there are two agamas, the Pancharatra agama and the Vaikhanasa agama. This Srirangam temple belonged to the Vaikhanasa agama till Ramanujacharya came, and he changed it from the Vaikhanasa to the Pancharatra agama, which would allow for more sections of the society participating in the affairs of this temple. And he wanted it to be that way. So the other thing that Ramanujacharya did, among the very many things, was to set the time for each festival, much of which is being followed every day. He also is said to have found that this is a very sweet story. Lord Ranganatha was not looking very well one day, and he asked for a special kashayam, a medicinal decoction, to be made in the sanctum of Dhanvantri in this temple and to be given to Lord Ranganatha. This is Pura Talwan, a disciple of Lord Ranganatha, and his son Parashara Bhatta. They all lived in the Chola period. Who else was here? Kamban of Ramayana fame, also believed by most historians to have lived in the Chola period, came here to the Srirangam temple to do the Arangetram for his magnum opus, the Kambaramayana. And where did this Arangetram take place? It took place in a Mantapam. This is there, this is that Mantapam. And even today it's called the Kamban Arangetra Mantapam. And it is right in front of the sanctum of goddess Ranganayaki. Now we are coming to, there are 21 Gopurams, as I said, of which there is one very, very historic Gopuram, and this is it. This is called the Vella Gopuram. I am showing you this because I think most of you will know that the two fish symbol belongs to the dynasty of the Pandyas. And the Pandyas made a substantial contribution to this temple, not the early Pandyas, but these were slightly later Pandyas around the 13th century. Huge contribution to this temple, especially by way of this Gopuram, which is even today called the Vella Gopuram. Vella in Tamil meaning white. It has always been painted white, not always, excuse me, starting from the 14th century, it is called the Vella Gopuram. Before that, it would not have been white, it would have been like any other Gopuram. Now, this is very typically of the Pandyan style of temple architecture. You can find Gopurams like this in several places in the Pandya country, in and around Madurai, etc., where this kind of very beautiful Gopuram is there. Now, why this Gopuram is painted white is of paramount importance to us. Just give me 1 second. Even though I'm jumping a few centuries, I have to say this here. The Pandyas, whose nerve center was Madurai, around the 13th century became a superpower. They destroyed the Cholas, who were not heard of after that, and the entire Tamil Nadu and parts of Andhra Pradesh became theirs. There was a particular king called Jatavarman Sundara Pandya in the 13th century, who was a very powerful king. And he had given his heart to Lord Ranganatha of Srirangam and also to Lord Nataraja of Chidambaram. And to both of these temples, he had made immense contribution, very great contribution. What he did in the Srirangam temple was to conduct what is called Tulabara. This is in the 13th century, I repeat. Like you see in Guruvayur today, you put a baby on one scale and on the other you weigh it with an equal amount of sugar, jaggery, fruit, rice, whatever, grain, and you give it to the god. Jatavarman Sundara Pandya, being a king, had to weigh himself against something extraordinary. So he weighed himself against precious stones, precious metal, gold, silver, etc., and gave it to the temple. He performed a very unique Tulabara. And in that, very unique, he placed two boats on the river Kaveri near the Srirangam temple. He put his elephant on one boat, got on to that elephant with lots of weapons, and the other boat was filled with a lot of jewels, gold, silver, etc. And when the boats were equally weighed, he got off, and that amount of wealth was donated to the Srirangam temple. There is a long inscription of Jatavarman Sundara Pandyas telling us about all the wealth that he gave to this temple. The Koil Olugu also tells us about his great contribution. So putting the Koil Olugu's information and the inscription information together, we have a grand idea of what Jatavarman Sundara Pandya did. And what he did was to cover this entire temple with gold. The Vimanam was gold. He made a golden image of separate one, golden image of Ranganatha. Maybe the Gopurams are also covered with gold, vessels of gold, dash. The list is enormous. I have that list here, but even to read it would take me half an hour. So I'm desisting from that. Literally lavished this temple with gold. And having done that, there is a saying in Sanskritam, Ati Sarvatra Varjayet. Too much of anything is bad and should be avoided. This was a little too lavish, and the glint of that gold caught the eye of no less a person than Alauddin Khilji, the Sultan of Delhi. And he sent an army under his most capable army general, Malik Kafur. Malik Kafur came on a raid of South India in the years 1310, 1311. He destroyed many temples en route, and his eye was set on the Srirangam temple because of its immense wealth. In a swift attack on Srirangam, much of this temple was destroyed, and a whole lot of its treasures were carried away to Delhi. This was in 1310, 1311. Very so, this was Jatavaranam Sundara Pandya's doing. But you see, even that would not have mattered. What happened was two of Jatavarman Sundara Pandya's successor, called Veerapandya and Sundara Pandya, fought amongst themselves. And Veerapandya was the braver of the two, the more capable of the two. So that Sundara Pandya, his brother, not knowing what to do, asked for the help of Alauddin Khilji. So as it is, Khilji knew about the great wealth of the Srirangam temple, and egged on by this invitation from Sundara Pandya, the invasion of Malik Kafur happened, and the Srirangam temple and town were totally devastated. Now there is one more Pandya era 13th century temple in Srirangam, which is very close to the Vella Gopuram. This is called the Kaliyugaraman Gopuram. Looking at it, it seems like very insipid. After seeing the Vella Gopuram, it doesn't seem like anything at all. But look at what we have over here. First, we have this insignia of the Pandyas. So we know it's a Pandyan period Gopuram. And then we have this. This is in Tamil called the Idutala Pakshi, the two-headed bird. It's also called the Ganda Berunda. Now, this is said by historians to belong to the dynasty of the Hoysalas. So who were these Hoysalas? They were ruling in the Karnataka area, in the southern Karnataka area, very close to Mysore was their capital called Dwara Samudra, which is the Halebid of today. And at one point of time, when the Cholas became very weak, they occupied a large part of Tamil Nadu, including the Trichy area. So we have this place called Samayapuram today. Samayapuram's original name was Somanathapuram, named after Somanatha, Veera Somanatha, one of the kings of the Hoysala dynasty. And Veera Somanatha's son, Ramanatha, was also ruling in Tamil Nadu, and a lot of contribution to the Srirangam temple was done by the Hoysalas, and this is that Idutala Pakshi is a standing example to show that this was the emblem of the Hoysalas in their area. Now, the Hoysala contribution to this temple, the Srirangam temple, is best remembered by the Venugopala Swami Sannadhi. There are many Krishna sanctums in this temple. There are many Rama sanctums. There are many Andal sanctums. Everything is like in huge proportions as far as the Srirangam temple is concerned. And this Venugopala Swami Krishna Sannadhi, I don't have a photo of the deity inside, but very, very clearly of workmanship that belongs to the Hoysala period. And this Sannadhi, this sanctum itself, as we can see, seems to have a lot of Hoysala input in it. Hoysala inscriptions are also found in other parts of the temple talking about donations. Now, this sanctum, this is God Dhanvantari, the god of medicine, holding a Shankha Chakra, the Amrita Kalasha in one hand, and the other hand holds a leech. The leech was used by doctors in the ancient world to cure their parents. It would suck out all the bad blood, and the patients would recover. So, the sanctum for Dhanvantari in this temple is very ancient. It is one of the few temples in Tamil Nadu that has a sanctum for this god. And as I said, Ramanujacharya also made some arrangements for a certain kashayam, a decoction, to be made in the sanctum for Dhanvantari and then offered to Lord Ranganatha every day. The Hoysalas made a huge contribution by reviving the Dhanvantari Sannadhi also. We have Hoysala inscriptions stating that in this temple. Why am I showing you these palm leaf manuscripts? These are not from this temple at all, but I'm showing them to you just to remind us that there was a library in this temple. And that library was called Saraswati Bandaram. Saraswati as in the goddess of learning, Bandaram as in a treasure house. So the Saraswati Bandaram, the library, has been mentioned in some Hoysala inscriptions also. And it is said that this library had the images of, yes, goddess Saraswati, god Hayagriva, who is the Vaishnavite god of wisdom, and a sculpture of Vedavyasa. Where exactly this library was situated, we have no idea, but huge number of manuscripts must have been there. Now, why have a library inside a temple? Because there would have been a Veda Patashala inside the temple, and students of the Veda Patashala, when they were learning ancillary allied subjects, subjects allied to the Vedas, would have had to make use of this library. So this is the time when Alauddin Khilji's invasion happens. It is said that, sorry, pictures are jumping. It is said that during this invasion, though we are not 100% sure of that, the Utsava Murti of Ranganatha, this Azhiya Manavalan, was taken out of this temple to some place. They say it is Delhi, and the daughter of the Sultan of Delhi fell in love with this image of Lord Ranganatha and took it to her chamber, her Antapuram. The people of Srirangam hastened there and asked this Sultan to give them back their Ranganatha, to which he agreed. But the people of Srirangam hastened. They quickly took away this image of Azhiya Manavalan and were on their way to Srirangam when this girl, the daughter, the Sultani, realized that that image that she so adored was not there. So she took some people and she followed that army to that group of people to Srirangam. Only thing is, she reached the Srirangam temple before the image was there, found the doors locked, and immediately gave up her life. Such was her great devotion to Lord Ranganatha that there was a sanctum for this now goddess built in this temple subsequently, and it is called the Bibi Nachiyar Sannadhi. It does not, this is it does not have an image inside, but a portrait of this goddess. The cheras of the Kerala area, especially a king called Ravi Varman Kulashekara, that's his date, 1299 to 1314 AD, made a huge contribution to this temple. And his name is not very well known, but because there is an inscription in this temple, we get to know about him. Close on the heels of the invasion of Alauddin Khilji, led by Malik Kafur in 1310-1311, there was another invasion in 1323. And this was led by a person called Ulugh Khan, who was going to be Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Now, this invasion was in a way much worse than that of Alauddin Khilji's, because while that one, the earlier one, was only a lightning raid, this one was something that was going to be more permanent. The invasion came and went. The result of which was Muhammad bin Tughlaq left a governor in the Srirangam temple, and it also led to the formation of what is now called the Sultanate of Madurai. From 1325, it lasted till 1371. Now, when the people of Srirangam had thought that all was lost, everything, most of the people of Srirangam were dead, the temple had been completely looted. Most of the structures, all belonging to the Chola, Pandya, Hoysala, so many other great epochs that I have spoken to you about, had been so badly devastated, so badly damaged. There was very little actually left in that temple at that point of time. Most of the samadhis were closed. There was a governor also put in charge, enemy governor put in charge of the Srirangam temple. Now, when people, a great Acharya called Vedanta Deshika had also fled to Srirangam to go to the Karnataka area. When people thought that all was lost, there was a glorious sunrise. And that sunrise was in 1336 AD, instigated by Swami Vidyaranya of the Shringeri Mata, having influenced two young chieftains called Harihara and Bukka, Hakka and Bukka they were called. They laid the foundations of the Vijayanagara Empire on the banks of river Tungabhadra in Karnataka in 1336. And Harihara and Bukka laid very, very strong foundations for that empire. What was a kingdom quickly grew into a great empire. And they were bent on reopening all the temples that were shut in South India. Bukka's son was called Kumara Kampana. Our history textbooks don't teach us anything. I'm sorry to say this, we're very frustrating. So this Kumara Kampana was sent to Tamil Nadu to expand the Vijayanagara Empire. He fought with many kings. He killed the Sultan of Madurai and he came and he reopened this temple. But before that happens, I have to tell you the story. This is the 14th century. This is Hampi. This is where the story of the Vijayanagara Empire happens. And this is the logo of the Vijayanagara Empire. I'm giving this in detail because without Vijayanagara, there would be no Srirangam temple today. So Kumar, during the invasion of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the Srirangam temple was virtually shut. As soon as people knew that invasion was coming, they quickly took the Utsava Murti of Ranganatha and goddess Ranganayaki and they hastened off in different directions. This Utsava Murti, as I said, was called Azhagiya Manavalan, quickly taken out of the Srirangam temple to the Madurai area, from there to Kozhikode, Calicut in Kerala, from there to Melkote in Karnataka. From there, they didn't want to stay in any place for very long. So they quickly went to Tirumala. En route to Tirumala, they saw some enemies approaching, went back to Melkote, finally found their way to Tirumala, where the image of Azhagiya Manavalan was kept in a mantapa in that hilltop town. And that mantapa, even today, bears the name Ranga Mantapa. And if you happen to go to the Tirumala temple, you pass by the Ranga Mantapa, you can see a plaque in English saying, this is where Lord Ranganatha stayed during the very disturbed period in the Srirangam temple. So now there was a person called Gopanna, who was a deputy of Kumara Kampana. This man, who ruled over a place called Senji or Jinji, went all the way to Tirumala, got the image of Azhagiya Manavalan, brought him to his town, Senji, kept him inside this small cave temple over here in a place called Singavaram, which is very close to Senji. Then he went all the way to Srirangam, defeated the governor who was there, and brought the image of Lord Ranganatha. I'm just skipping a few slides because I don't have the time, sorry. And brought back the image of Lord Ranganatha to the Srirangam temple. Now there was a small hitch over there. This original image of Ranganatha, who had gone for 48 years out of the temple, nobody recognized him when he came back to Srirangam. The people had made another Utsavamurti and they were worshipping him. So they were confused. They didn't know which was the original one and which was the one that was made later. At that point of time, see, history is made even more interesting by local anecdotes, though we can't give proper evidence for them. So in the traditional history of this temple, there is the story. The two images were there. The original one that had come back after 48 years and the newer image that had been in worship. So they called an old washerman who was actually blind. And they said, you have washed the clothes of this Utsavamurti. So now we are going to give you both the vastrams of the newer image and the older image. And you please tell us which is the old one. So they gave him the clothes of the new image first. He looked at it, he smelled it, he kept it aside. Then he took the clothes of the older image and he said to have exclaimed, "This is Nam Perumal, this is our Perumal." And so the people came to accept it. Now, what is very interesting is this great scholar called Vedanta Deshika, who had left the Sri Rangam temple at a time when that invasion of Ulugh Khan came. He went to the Karnataka area and stayed there. When he knew that the Srirangam temple was going to be opened, that is 1371, he came, he was 99 years old at that time. And he came all the way from the from the Melkot area to the Srirangam temple. And this great scholar who would never ever praise mortals, praised this man Gopanna for the great work he had done in restoring the god back to his original abode. And I'll read out this verse for you. It is etched on the walls of the second prakaram in this temple. It's a verse in Sanskritam. Aniya Anila Shringa Dyutirachita Jagat Granjanad Anjanadrehe Tenjyam Aradhya Kinchit Samayamata Nihatyot Ganushkan Purushkan Lakshmi Kshmabhyam Ubhabhyam Saha Nija Nilaye Stapayan Ranganatham Samyak Varyam Saparyam Akrita Nija Yasho Darpano Gopanaryaha. Basically telling us of the great deeds of Gopanna and how he almost sacrificed his life in getting the image of Ranganatha for us. And there is an image, there is a sanctum for this god, for this Acharya inside the Srirangam temple even today. And Vijayanagara, Krishnadevaraya has made immense contribution to this temple. Many are their copper plate inscriptions. See, if you walk into the Srirangam temple today, most of the architecture belongs to the Vijayanagara times or to that of their successors, the Nayaks. And the main reason for that is because of the devastating invasions that happened. You do have Pandya period structures, you do have Chola period structures, you do have Hoysala era structures also, like the Venugopala Swami Sannidhi temple. But the number of inscriptions that are there of various other dynasties, their contributions, etc., is not reflected in the architecture simply because much of it disappeared and had to be redone by the Vijayanagara rulers. Now here, and there we should not forget the successors of Vijayanagara in the Tamil country, the Nayaks. Now this is the 1000-pillared hall that I'm showing you, very much a Vijayanagara Nayak period structure. Opposite that, I am showing you the 100-pillared Mantapa, which is also called the Sesharaya Mantapa, where the pillars, all Nayak period, these are all 17th century, are there. Amazing pieces of sculpture that we have here. And there are so many portrait sculptures of the Nayak kings. Look at their conical crown. Each is different. All these are the Nayak kings whose great service to this temple we just cannot afford to forget. As I told you earlier, in the Prakaram, around the sanctum for Goddess Ranganayaki, on the ceiling, you find some fantastic paintings. The paintings were there in various other parts of this temple, but we don't see them today. These are Nayak era paintings, 17th century, I repeat. And each of these paintings has a caption underneath written in Telugu because the Nayaks were Telugu speaking kings. Many of their inscriptions are in Tamil also. Vijayaranga Chokkanath Nayak of Madurai gave up his throne and came and settled down in Srirangam, completely dedicating himself to the service of this temple. Many people have done that, and he was one of them. And his ivory sculpture with that of his wife, son, and daughter-in-law is seen very close to the main sanctum of this temple. Tirumalai Nayak, the great Tirumalai Nayak, who didn't contribute much to this temple, but I'm just showing this sculpture to you because of the great contribution. Another outstanding contribution to the Srirangam temple by the Nayaks was the base of a gopuram that they built in the 17th century. This gopuram is now known as the outermost gopuram. This is called the Rajagopuram of this temple. Now it was completely and totally abandoned like this, and it was left to the pontiff of the Ahobila Madam, the Jeer of the Ahobila Madam, to complete it in the 20th century. We'll come to this. Tyagaraja Swami, to wind up this lecture, the great music composer, came to this temple and he sang 5 beautiful songs on this temple. The most famous being O Rangashayi in the Ragam Kambodi. It is said that during an Utsavam of this temple, Tyagaraja Swami wanted to see the Utsavamurti Azhiya Manavalan, and he was not able to. And for some inexplicable reason, the procession stopped. People tried to take it forward, but the procession would not move till such time as Tyagaraja Swami was brought in front of the image. He prayed, and then the procession is said to have moved again. It is also said that he was taken into the main sanctum of this temple, where he sang this O Rangashayi, and such was Tyagaraja Swami's contribution. Muthuswami Dikshitar, Arunachala Kavirayar, so many others also came to this temple. So that unfinished Gopuram that we saw has transformed into this Raja Gopuram, the tallest, or maybe now they say there's another temple that has a taller Gopuram, but I would like to say that perhaps the landmark Gopuram of India, going up to more than 200 feet, is this. So the lower portion, the base, belongs to the 17th century. The superstructure belongs to the 20th century. And so the Srirangam temple, many Utsavams. This is one small tear that I'm showing you. Many Utsavams. Of course, the temple has elephants as well. And this is one town where the ancient and the modern go hand in hand. I know I'm almost out of time, but I don't want to stop without telling you that as far as architecture is concerned, this temple is hard to beat. 21 gopurams, 7 prakarams, approximately 60 sanctums, all built at different times. So much of tradition. Nathamuni was here, the Alvars were here, Nathamuni was here, Ramanujacharya was here. In between, so many other acharyas were here. Vedanta Deshika was here. And this I'm leaving out much in between. In between, so many other things happened. Traditional families of so many of the greats who had served this temple are still there in the temple premises. So many of the rituals and festivals pre-Ramanujacharya, post-Ramanujacharya are still being performed. So many festivals are also being performed in this temple. Rangayatra Dine Dine, said the Kuleshekar Alvar. Indeed, it is Rangayatra Dine Dine. Every day there's a festival. The amount of research one needs to do to even actually start to understand this temple is mind-blowing. With 600 inscriptions and the Koil Urdu giving us that much information, we need to go from Sannadhi to Sannadhi to Sannadhi, from sculpture to sculpture to sculpture, and try to identify it. Of course, great people in the past have done so much. V.N. Harirav's book on the Srirangam temple is something that is like a Veda as far as this temple is concerned. But there is always scope for more research, and the more we read, the more we understand. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Shashikala ji, for this opportunity to talk about the Srirangam temple in the full awareness that I have done no justice at all in any way to this temple. I just have to rest assured that it is very difficult to do justice to this mammoth gem, this treasure that we have.
I think we got quite a taste of it from you. You can go on for another 10-15 minutes, Chitra, if you want.
Thank you, but I've run out of slides. I'll take questions. I'll elaborate on the questions.
Thank you. It was beautiful and fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There is a question by Pooja. Is there any particular Vastu related reason for the temple to face south?
Not to the best of my knowledge. It's only due to the Sthala Puranam, the tradition of this temple, that it faces south. But there may be something that I am unaware of.
Hmm.
See, there are possibilities of temples facing south in Shaiva and Shakta traditions, but seldom in Vaishnava traditions. It must be one of the very rare ones. Because Shiva is supposed to face all four directions. Tatpurusham, Vamadevam, and so on.
Right.
All four directions is allowed.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a quick question, Chitra.
Yes,
There's something about Nathamuni. My
Yes.
husband wants to ask you something. Ask, Ma. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Chitrama, there's a thing. I'm Krishnamacharya student,
Ah,
and I'm sure you know this thing about Krishnamacharya
yes.
talking about Nathamuni and Yoga Rahasyam.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to have seen the whole Yoga Rahasyam in his dream and whatever. And there are two versions of it. One was that Yoga Rahasyam was written Olasavadila.
Ah.
It was in the Saraswati Mahal Library. And he was taken to it through the dream அப்படின்ட்டு ஒரு தடவை சொல்லிருக்கார்.
Ah.
But உங்களுக்கு என்ன தெரியுமா அதை பத்தி நாத்தமுனியோட ஹிஸ்டரியில that he is supposed to have written about yoga and taught yoga.
He would have, but I am not aware of that aspect.
She doesn't know.
There's another question. Can you please share reference or name of book to read by Kranti? And she thanks you for making us understand the history. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, there is a book on the Srirangam temple by V for Victory, N for Nagpur, Hari Rao. That is the book that one should read. Two books, one on art and architecture, one on the history of the Srirangam temple. And yes, those are the books to read. It was his PhD thesis. You'll find them in most libraries. They're out of print, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
And incidentally, I've also compiled a book. I've not written it. I've compiled a book on the Srirangam temple, and lots of authors have contributed to it.
Is that available online?
I'm sorry?
Is the compilation available online as a?
I'm not sure the publisher has put it online.
Okay.
But if anybody is interested, I can give you his phone number.
Okay. Sudhir is asking a question. Sudhir, you want to take, you want to ask the question directly? You can unmute and ask. Yeah, Sudhir, you go ahead. Can't hear you though. Okay, I can read out the question for now. He says, you spoke of the Utsava being taken from place to place for protection, but how did the Moolavar escape unscathed?
Okay. So I cut all that out. So what they did was they built a brick wall in front of, they built a wall in front of the Moolavar. As though to say there was nothing behind it at all. And therefore the Moolavar escaped from being tarnished.
So they built it ahead of the invasion. They had already built the wall.
Sorry?
They built the wall ahead of the invaders coming in.
As soon as they knew the invasion was coming, and at the time when the Utsava was being taken out of the temple, very quickly they built a wall in front of the main sanctum. Does this book cover all the rituals prescribed? Which book? V. N. Hari Rao's book? No, no, no. It doesn't deal with rituals. It deals only with, yes, it's in English, and it deals only with the history and the art and architecture, not with rituals. No.
I just wanted to give a quick piece of information, Chitra. Maybe you'll know about it. When I was traveling to Tirupati with Ganapati Stapati, he told me that there was a similar problem that happened in Tirupati because of the Islamic invasion. And his contention was that the statue, the Mulavar in the lower level, no, the Adivarathila, there is a temple. He says that is the original. The one in the temple on top is actually the second one that was placed for, during the invasion.
I see.
He says the lower one is the older one. It belongs to an older tradition of sculpture.
My goodness me.
But it's a very controversial statement. So he said the Vaishnavites will kill me if I say it. So I don't want to talk about it in public.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing.
It's very interesting, honestly.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Kalyan Ram asks, which book describes rituals you would like to do?
I'm not sure there is any one book on the Sri Rangam temple describing the rituals. I don't know. I don't think so.
This kind of knowledge is also held within
a scholar to do a PhD.
I think this is something that you need to, you tell the person that they need to refer to an Agama Pandit who will have the background of the Agama Shastra that is used for Sri Rangam temple. It's a different subject altogether.
Correct. Very true.
And Hari Mohan sir says there's a need to introduce comprehensive socio-cultural history of life of temples and architecture courses across India. Are there already courses being integrated? Because you said the history is lacking. I mean, we all know that.
I don't know of any such course having been introduced in schools or colleges. I don't know of any, sadly.
Yeah. Much needed. And Kalyanram wants to know if we can have your contact details. Can you type in your email address in the chat box? So
I'll do that.
Yes.
You brought the whole history alive for us, Ma. It was such an exciting experience. It was like reading Ponniyin Selvan or whatever, it was like that.
Thank you very much. But I feel hugely dissatisfied because we know how much there is in this temple. The wealth we are looking at is not the kind of wealth that Jatavarman Sundara Pandya gave. The wealth we are looking at is like architecture, sculpture, traditions, inscriptions, rituals. That's the kind of wealth we are interested in.
Yeah, true.
Most welcome.
Fantastic.
I think the part about 1336 AD was also very inspiring. Maybe we could do a session on that also, like because it's a long.
No, I think what we need is a whole day's workshop with Chitra Madhavan,
right,
so that she gives us a taste of this whole experience that obviously she's holding with so much passion. I think we'd really like that with you, Ma.
Yeah, this was like just a flavor.
Just a flavor.
Now there has to be a taste. And then...
Yeah. And also that Vella Gopuram ninga chonningale, I heard a story that there was this woman called Vellai who actually committed suicide.
Yes. So yes, for want of time, I left that out. So what happened was, when this temple was occupied by a Muslim governor, who was, not ethical in his ways. This Devadasi belonging to the temple, who is known as Vellayammal, she decided to do away with him. So she lured him up the temple. I think everybody knows there are steps inside Gopuram. Lured him up the Gopuram, this Vella Gopuram. It was not called Vella Gopuram at that time. She lured him up and she pushed him down and he died. But she was also so vexed, overwrought by what she had done, that she also jumped down from the Gopuram and died. And the temple authorities decided that one thing, she would be cremated with the logs of wood from the temple kitchen, the Madapalli. That was the honor they could give her. They painted that Gopuram white because her name was Vellayammal. It remains Vellai Gopuram till today in her memory, in her honor. And her descendants were also cremated with logs of woods from the temple's sacred kitchen till such time as they lived in Srirangam. So these were some of the honors that were done to her. It's given in the Koiluru.
Beautiful.
Very moving, very, very
Yeah,
touching, very moving.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we have any more questions? You can unmute and ask. There's one in the chat box. Which of them?
Which nine? Let's start with the Srirangam, which is a compilation. I have not really written it. I've compiled it. Some articles are mine, but lots of articles from different people. You can start with that. Thank you all.
There's one question. What lessons can we and the government take from the Srirangam temple story?
Sorry, I don't get that. What?
Vikas, you want to unmute and ask directly what you mean by that? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, madam. My question is that a lot has happened in history with our temples. So, what should we learn and what should we initiate to avoid such instances in future, and so that our heritage can be protected for a long time? So from the side, as an individual, what we should do, and as a government, how should we sensitize the government so that this our cultural heritage should be protected?
Really out of my scope. Out of
He's a lawyer. That's why he's asking you this question.
All I can say is we have to sensitize the next generation, because I think we've let things go. We've let history become a boring subject. How can a history of a country like India, where we have so many monuments, so many local traditions, how on earth did they manage to make that subject boring? I mean, this calls for a lot of talent to make a subject like this boring. We've done it, and we've done it with aplomb, but so sad, so sad.
I know.
So let's get our youngsters to love history, love our tradition, love our culture. Our work will be over once we do that.
Absolutely.
Madam, do you see any hope in Indian knowledge system which is to be introduced? Because your kind of people, I believe that must be in touch with those authorities we are involved in Indian knowledge system.
In the Indian knowledge systems, one of the best things that has happened to our curriculum, if you ask me, I pray that it remains long and deep-rooted and lots of students benefit from it. If something like that is introduced in schools also, I'll be very happy.
Okay, madam. Thank you so much. I hope that you are capable to sensitize the government, because new policy is about to come on our education. So
Vikas.
I still have hope, because you are in this field, and I think the government is listening the people like you. So please represent us, represent the voice of our country before these authorities to bring this knowledge live in front of our next generation. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So you can unmute and say this also. Hari Mohan sir says, we would like to invite you to speak to students of master's course in Indian knowledge systems in Pune.
I've just done that because of Shashikala ji. She introduced me to MIT, the architecture program, and I have been, I taught 6 classes there.
Yes, she's been doing it, Harimohan.
And can I ask you, ma'am, like, how did you get introduced or how did you get inspired to take on this work, like the research that you do and the initial?
Oh, that's a long story. That addiction began when I was 13 years old.
Okay.
An addiction. Yeah. So my parents took me to various places. We went on a holiday. We visited some Hoysala temples. I was interested in history even before that, but that tour where we visited some Hoysala temples and the Srirangam temple, that was it. Then I said, this is all I'm going to do against all opposition. Believe me, a lot of opposition, I've done it. What kind of subject is history? What are you going to do with history? I mean, what future will you have? I said, I don't know the answer to any of these questions. This is what I want to study. That's all.
Well
Even
done.
8th standard. Yeah.
I still
Well
don't have the answers to these questions. I'm just doing what I want to do. That's all.
It's true though. I think as children, you know what you're interested in, and if you follow that, it's
You
the
have to follow
community.
your heart.
Yeah.
The economics of it will come if you follow your heart.
Yeah. That's inspiring also to hear.
Absolutely.
Any more questions?
Otherwise, shall we wind up?
Yeah, I think Hari Mohan sir is on unmute. Do you want to share anything, sir? Do you want to say anything?
Yes, madam. Thank you very much for a wonderful talk. You know, our problem is that we consider history as boring, but our personal history is never boring. So we should start with our personal history, to the family history and the local community history, state history, history of our language, and so on. I mean, we are teaching history in a very wrong way, actually. We are using the Western methods of teaching history. Our ways of teaching history should start from our personal and family history onward, you know, then we would definitely take interest in our culture and social backgrounds, you know.
That's right.
Some kind of change is required in our approach towards history itself, teaching and learning of history. Who doesn't like personal history and family history? Everyone likes. Yeah. We like to be connected to, because we should start with that, you know. And history of our language also, because we are far removed from our language and its connection to our life, you know. See, today in order to connect with you, we have to speak in English, which is not our language at all, unfortunately. So we are not yet tied together by even our language. That's again another problem, which is erased for you know, for many years. It has got erased, you know, our connect with our language and our roots. So maybe we should revive everything. And that is one reason under NEP it is being proposed under National Education Policy to give importance to our language and the you know, so perhaps
yes,
it will take some time, but I think we'll reach that stage when we start appreciating
I
our
think
culture.
Harimohan,
Thank you very much for a
all of
wonderful
us
talk.
are coming together because of this. Yeah, we're all coming together for this. We are creating
Yes,
a platform where this can take place. This possibility can take place. Yeah.
There's a last question by Kalyan Ram. He's asking, can you share calendar of heritage tours if you organize any?
Yeah, I last 1-2 years we've not done anything. So maybe with the grace of God, next year we can restart. I usually put it up on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, and you can see it.
So to be put up through your profile, ma'am? On your
Facebook.
profile.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. All right.
Um,
So, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very insightful session. Just one very inquisitive thing I wanted to know, since you were mentioning about the musical composers, about Tyagaraja Swami, Swami Dikshiter and all. So is there more details to it available in the books you mentioned? Because the life histories of them, autobiographies, don't include this details which you said now. So are there...
No, I got it from some musicians. Maybe it has not been printed in books, but most musicians know about this incident connected with the life of Tyagaraja Swami and the Srirangam Temple.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So that was a wonderful experience.
Thank you, Shashikala ji. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
We
Thank
had
you.
a wonderful time. Chandana, you want to give us kind of a vote of thanks?
Yes, of course. I think this platform was meant to kind of bring in a network of people who are interested in connecting with the Indian knowledge systems and also the practices. Like a lot of things that you touched upon is held by the people, not really can be found on Google or through books. So for us, it's important to connect with people like you who've kind of really gone in and worked with all those different aspects of the tradition. And I think more and more, I think we're realizing the team that's working with Vastu and Learning with Shashikala ma'am, we're realizing that a lot of it is still very relevant, and it's important to create that bridge to bring it into the mainstream. And so we take it forward because there are a lot of young people who, there is a void in all of our knowledge and our skills and all that, how to navigate our current context and the different crises and all that. And definitely this can create a good foundation for all of us. So thank you for sharing everything that you have today. And we hope to connect again for the next one-day workshop that we are now thinking about. And we also hope to continue this meeting on the Vastu Mandala platform. So we're happy to have so many people who stayed on till the end. So would you like to share anything, ma'am? Chitra ma'am, any last words? No.
Just to thank all of you very much once again for inviting me.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Ashtanga Namaskaram.
Ashtanga Namaskaram.
Lord Ranganatha, please.
Through you. Yeah. Done.
All right. So we call it a complete session. And yes, we would like to hear feedback from everybody else. You can share with us by email, and we'll send out a form also. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Namaskaram.
Thank you, ma'am. Wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.